He's too old.
He is the chosen one. You must see it.
Clouded this boy's future is.
I will train him then. I take Anakin as my Padawan learner.
Our story begins during the climax of The Phantom Menace. Little Anakin is in a Naboo starfighter, spinning and carrying the rest of the pilots, while the Gungans are trying their best to do war on the plains of Naboo against the Trade Federation droid army. Our attention, however, is focused on that of Naboo's capital of Theed, where Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are currently in a duel of the fates between that of Darth Maul. Events would play similar to that of the movie. Blows would be shared back and forth between the Jedi and the Sith Lord. Eventually, Obi-Wan would be knocked off a platform like he was in the movie, leaving Qui-Gon alone against the sinister Darth Maul. Eventually, Qui-Gon, with his aggressive lightsaber style of Ataru, would force Maul back from the larger Theed power room into that of the reactor room. Obi-Wan would catch up from being knocked down from the platform earlier, but laser shields would separate him yet from his master. However, compared to that of the movie, when the shields would turn off again in that sequential order, Obi-Wan would utilize force speed to quickly close the distance between his master and Maul, just reaching the back reactor room before the laser shields closed behind him. Now, the Jedi Master and Apprentice had Maul on the ropes, with their 2-to-1 advantage and being in a smaller room, now making it harder for Maul to utilize his double-bladed lightsaber to his full potential and his acrobatic movements and fighting style. Things were looking up for the light side team. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon worked together and Maul was getting backed to a corner. Eventually, Maul would get desperate and try to make a move for the offensive, attempting to take the weaker Jedi Apprentice out of the fight in a swift fashion. He made a swift slash with the intent to kill Obi-Wan, but Obi-Wan mostly managed to dodge Maul's swift attack, but his saber arm was cut by Maul's blade, severing it off. However, in this swift offensive motion, it left Maul's defenses wide open. With the last of Qui-Gon's energy, he delivered a quick but deadly thrust to Darth Maul, the instantaneous moment after he dismembered Obi-Wan. Maul lay defeated in the Theed power core room, with both Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan making it out alive. Not quite unscathed, though. They rushed out of the power room to get Obi-Wan's arm medical attention immediately. With Anakin Skywalker blowing up the main control ship for the droids and Darth Maul defeated, the Battle of Naboo was over, with the Trade Federation defeated, and the Dark Lord of the Sith now missing an apprentice. Following the Battle of Theed, our story resumes days after this epic duel of the fates, back on Coruscant at the Jedi Temple. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were given some time to rest and heal up after their battle. In the meantime, Obi-Wan had a prosthetic metallic arm created for him, for the hand that was severed by the Dark Lord. Young Anakin Skywalker hung around with the pair, as he had still no place at the Jedi Temple. After necessary time of rest and repair, the Jedi Duel and Force Anomaly were once again called upon by the Jedi Council, who wanted a detailed report of the events that occurred on Naboo, among other important matters to discuss. Qui-Gon explained most of what took place, about how they took back the capital Theed and the Gungans helped in the battle, but the main focus and area for concern was that of the unknown Force user and the duel that left Obi-Wan critically injured. Qui-Gon was very adamant to the council, saying that it had to be a Sith, as without Obi-Wan's help, he would have not been able to defeat the Force user on his own. The Sith had returned, along with the obvious giveaways of more dark side tendencies in Maul's lightsaber fighting styles. There was much confusion and thought around the council, and similar to that of the movie, a statement was made.
There's no doubt the mysterious warrior was a Sith.
Always two there are. No more, no less. A master and an apprentice.
But which was destroyed, the master or the apprentice?
The Jedi Council advised caution to the rest of the members and decided it would be best to keep it between the council members, to not spread fear of the Sith's return. But they knew now they would have to keep an eye out for a Sith Lord lurking menacingly somewhere in the galaxy. But where could he be hiding? The next matter of discussion was that of the fate of young Anakin Skywalker. The council was still under the opinion that Anakin was too old to be trained as a Jedi, and that Qui-Gon already had an apprentice, but Qui-Gon would not have it. Obi-Wan should already be a Jedi Knight. What other Jedi Padawan has fought, let alone survived, a duel between a Sith Lord, Trials or not, Obi-Wan is more than ready than any Padawan has ever been to be a knight. In some ways, he's wiser than myself. I've nothing left to teach him, and am ready to take on another apprentice of Anakin Skywalker. He's too powerful in the Force to not be trained as a Jedi. You must see this. Without his help on Naboo, the battle against the droids would have been lost. You must see that the boy is the chosen one. Jedi Master Windu asked for them to step out of the Jedi Council chambers so that the members could discuss amongst themselves. After what felt like an eternity, the three of them are called back into the chambers with a decision seemingly made. Yoda proclaimed, "Granted the right to participate in the Jedi trials, Obi-Wan will be. Train the boy, you will." A smile went across Anakin's face as he turned to Qui-Gon to see him smiling back. Obi-Wan also looked pleased with the decision. "However," Mace Windu interrupted, "the boy will be your responsibility, Qui-Gon. Boy has not been trained at his age for centuries. Take care in training young Skywalker." Qui-Gon nodded, and the trio made their way out of the chambers. Arrangements were made for Obi-Wan's trials days after this meeting, where he easily passed and was granted the rank of Jedi Knight. Qui-Gon congratulated him, but advised him to keep trusting in the Force. Qui-Gon would go on to take Anakin Skywalker as his new Jedi apprentice, teaching him in the ways of the Force. Qui-Gon would especially focus on Anakin to be mindful of the living Force, and to just focus more on the subtleties of the Force itself, more than that of a standard Jedi Master. Qui-Gon liked when Anakin had questions that may have deemed inappropriate or out of line by other Jedi, as he believed having a greater understanding of the Force at large, and just the galaxies in general, was more important to be a good Jedi. Knowledge was power. Anakin was a fast learner, and Qui-Gon taught him well. Years would pass, and Anakin would become very powerful and wise for a Jedi apprentice, under the watchful eye of Qui-Gon Jinn as his master. Our story continues now very similar to that of the Attack of the Clones film, with Padme Amidala being targeted by Jango Fett and other assassins. Qui-Gon and Anakin this time would be assigned to guard Padme, and with Qui-Gon's powerful Force meditation, they were able to prevent the attempt on Padme's life by that of Zam Wesell. But similarly, were not able to find the true identity of the ones behind it. Only a small clue of a Kaminoan saber dart was left behind. Similar to the films, Anakin would be made Padme's Jedi protector, and they would retreat to Naboo. Events would play out almost identically, with the two of them growing close together. Anakin gets Force visions of his mom dying, and this time, compared to that of the movie, he immediately acts on tracking her down. The pair head to Tatooine and look to track down Shmi Skywalker. This time, as Anakin was even more rebellious of the Jedi Order due to his training with Qui-Gon, they actually made it in time and save Anakin's mother from the Sand People. He does have to kill some of the Sand People in the troop that took her, but just enough for him to escape with his mother. With catching up with his mother and knowing she was back in safer hands with her husband, Anakin was at ease, and him and Padme returned to Naboo. A key difference here is Anakin does not lean to the dark side in this event with his mother, as he gets there in time to save her. At the same time that was going on, Qui-Gon was dealing with a disgruntled Jedi Master, his old master, Dooku. You see, in this timeline, with Qui-Gon still alive, Dooku never fully turns away from the Jedi. Though Dooku did have a discussion with Darth Sidious, but he never agreed on his thoughts on fully crushing the Republic. With Qui-Gon still alive, there was never that key moment that fully turned Dooku away. Qui-Gon and Dooku were discussing the growing concerns across the galaxy, with systems starting to leave the Republic. Rumors of a potential war were starting to spread. Dooku even mentioned the idea to Qui-Gon of leaving the Jedi Order together and asking if he would come with him to help stop the corruption of the galaxy and the Republic. Qui-Gon did agree that the Jedi were starting to lose their way, but they needed to wait for the Force to guide their decisions. He had faith in his apprentice, and the Chosen One as well, to bring balance. Qui-Gon simply advised patience to his old master Dooku, and to trust in the Force for now. The clue of the Kaminoan saber dart was assigned to be investigated to none other than that of the now Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi and his young apprentice, Ahsoka Tano. They made their way to the planet of Kamino, which in this world was a bit easier to find, as Dooku never went along to delete the coordinates from the Jedi Archive. On Kamino, they would discover that a clone army was being made for the Republic, to the Jedi's surprise. You see, even without Dooku, did you really expect the Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Sidious, to not have a backup plan? Dooku and Qui-Gon Jinn were not the only Jedi that didn't exactly follow the rules or were fully content with the Jedi. Dooku's close friend, Sidious, had grown discontent with the Jedi's actions over the years. And actually, back in the year 52 BBY, before the Phantom Menace, Sidious, Dooku, Qui-Gon, and others were already talking in secret on the planet of Serrano, discussing their concerns for the Republic. It was here, unbeknownst to the Jedi, Hago Damask of Damask Holdings, who in reality was Darth Plagueis, Dark Lord of the Sith at the time, suggested to Sidious that a clone army should be created for the protection of the Republic. Jumping back to our current story, Palpatine, having a harder time to turn Dooku, had already shifted his focus on Jedi Master Sidious and turned him successfully. He had convinced him that the Republic was doomed, and the only way for the galaxy to be safe would be to eventually transform the Republic into a firmer empire, ensuring peace and a safe society. Sidious in this timeline still ordered the clone army, but he was never killed. He was Palpatine's new apprentice, Darth Titus. As soon as Titus found that Obi-Wan and his apprentice were headed to Kamino, he went into hiding, knowing what would be coming next. With Obi-Wan and his apprentice Ahsoka captured on Geonosis after pursuing Jango Fett, Jedi in the new clone army came to their rescue, and the Clone Wars erupted. Qui-Gon Jinn and Jedi Padawan Anakin Skywalker led the charge to rescue their old friend Obi-Wan and his apprentice. Anakin led the fight against Darth Titus and forced him to retreat with the help of other Jedi. Anakin fought with courage and great power for his age, and the Battle of Geonosis went on into the Republic's favor, though it started a chain reaction beyond their control and ultimately a loss. Countless star systems left the Republic to join the Confederation of Independent Systems, with Sidious emerging from hiding, proclaiming to be their leader. He was just playing the other side of the war. In reality, he was still Darth Titus, apprentice to Darth Sidious. After the Battle of Geonosis, Jedi Padawan Anakin Skywalker was granted to take the Jedi trials and was promoted to Jedi Knight. Qui-Gon Jinn was very proud of the young Jedi, once boy found on the desert planet, and would continue to guide Anakin through this time of uncertainty. Anakin in secret had fallen in love with Padme, with his time protecting her, and they got married towards the end of Anakin's assignment to protect her. Similar to the main timeline, the Clone Wars broke at full scale across the galaxy. Many worlds got involved in the conflict, some less enthusiastic about the prospect of war, but they didn't exactly have a choice in the matter. General Obi-Wan Kenobi, Commander Ahsoka Tano, along with the now Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, were among the Republic's top commanders of the Clone Wars. They liberated countless systems from separatist tyranny across worlds such as Ryloth, Megiddo, and Corellia. Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn, however, was not as enthusiastic about this war, and the Jedi now being used as military commanders. He sat out most of the war, only electing to deal with matters that he decided would save the most amount of lives. His patience with the Republic and the Jedi Order was being questioned as well, and his old master Dooku felt the same way. They were perplexed that their old friend Sidious had fully embraced the dark side and joined the Separatists. Sidious even managed to turn Jedi Barriss Offee to the dark side, another Jedi disgruntled with the Jedi Order. And Barriss led many Separatist forces against the Republic, being a great nuisance. In any case, a lot of it didn't make sense to Dooku and Qui-Gon. Something was off about this war. Let's fast forward 3 years. The galaxy's in shambles and the Clone Wars are nearing its end. Chancellor Palpatine has been captured by Barriss Offee in a terrorist attack, and the most prominent and powerful Jedi Knight of the Clone Wars, Anakin Skywalker, is assigned to get the Chancellor back. Qui-Gon Jinn decides to join with Anakin, as he felt the Force was calling his involvement. When they breach the main Separatist command ship, Qui-Gon sensed a trap. Chancellor Palpatine is bound to a chair, and when they approach him, the Dark Jedi Barriss Offee confronts them. But she's not alone. Darth Titus emerges as well. 2 epic duels ensue between the dark side users and the Force users. It started as Anakin versus Barriss, but the battle got complicated at times, with Anakin and Qui-Gon having to switch opponents frequently, taking turns against the Dark Lord Titus. Sith lightning could be seen through the windows of the command deck. Qui-Gon Jinn was older now than he was before, and the age was beginning to slow him down. The dark side users continued to wear him down. Anakin noticed that Barriss and Titus were now trying to focus on his old master. After Titus sent a wave of Force lightning through Qui-Gon that sent him unconscious, it was now just Anakin versus Barriss and Titus. Anakin, now seeing his Jedi Master on the floor not moving, kicked it into high gear. And this is where Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker did something bizarre that no Jedi would dare do. As Barriss and Darth Titus approached him, he closed his eyes. The dark side users mocked him at first, but when the strikes from the Jedi now came faster and more precise, Barriss and Titus took him more seriously. Anakin let the living force flow through him, trusting in the force to guide his movements in combat, and used his instincts, not allowing his eyes to deceive him. He was an absolute machine, and even though he was on a 2-to-1 disadvantage, he was pushing Barriss and Titus back, to Darth Titus's dismay. Palpatine in the background watched with great interest and a smile. Eventually, Anakin managed to deal a fatal blow to Darth Titus, killing the Dark Lord in his place. Barriss, however, took the opportunity to retreat to an escape pod, and she escaped. In the aftermath of the battle, Anakin freed the Chancellor, who thanked him and complimented his sportsmanship. And then he checked out Qui-Gon. Thankfully, Qui-Gon was still breathing, so he put his master on his back and used the last of his Force energy to safely get Qui-Gon and the Chancellor off the ship. When returning to Coruscant, Anakin was greeted by many politicians from the Jedi Council. They complimented his work and proclaimed him a hero. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka had just returned from a mission on Corellia, and they exchanged hugs. Anakin, however, was most focused on his wife, Padme. He was happy to see his wife, as was she. That's when Padme shared the news of her pregnancy towards Anakin. Anakin's reaction at first was lackluster, but he eventually smiled and knew he would be able to work something out with his secret relationship and duties to the Jedi. After all, he was the chosen one. After the rescue of the Chancellor, Anakin earned some much-needed time off. Of course, he spent this time with his wife Padme at her apartments, and they slept together. In his sleep, however, Anakin was now having dreams of his wife's death. He knew of dreams he had before of his mother, but dismissed them at first as he was able to save his mother. As the dreams got worse, he could no longer ignore them. He had to make sure his wife was safe. That is, when Anakin had a great decision to make. Anakin visited Qui-Gon, who was still recovering in a medical unit from his injuries sustained in the battle versus Darth Titus. Thankfully, Qui-Gon was conscious now. He was expected to recover. It was here where Anakin revealed that he was married to Padme Amidala, and that she was pregnant. To Anakin's surprise, Qui-Gon didn't react much or seem surprised. It seemed he already knew. He told Anakin that he already had suspected as much, but was hoping that Anakin would reveal the truth to him soon. Anakin then revealed that he was having Force visions of Padme's death and his concern for her. Qui-Gon stood upright the best he could and put a hand on his chin, thinking deeply on what his apprentice had told him. He then said, "Anakin, I have known you since you were a boy. You won the Boonta Eve Classic pod race and built a human relations droid when you were just 9 years old. You have always been gifted. I don't know why you are having these visions, but you need only meditate on the matter to find the truth behind these visions. And remember, trust in the living Force." Anakin hugged his old master and returned back to his room to the Jedi Temple. He meditated deeply. "I must trust in the Force. It is my guide," Anakin said to himself as he meditated alone. He thought deeply to himself and pondered on why he might be having the visions of Padme's death. The next day, Anakin was in for a shock. The Jedi Council summoned him. The council members had cold faces when he entered the chambers. "Your old master is dead," Mace Windu informed him. "What? How?" Anakin asked. Emotion swelled at him. How could have this happened?
"Assassinated in the night he was," Yoda said. "Terrible it was, yes."
Anakin had many mixed emotions, but remembered Qui-Gon's teachings and to trust in the Force. He kept his emotions at bay until he was out of the chamber, and the tears started erupting. How could Qui-Gon be gone? The Jedi that freed him from his slavery? The Jedi that vouched for him to be trained? The one person who Anakin looked up to like a father that he never had. As Anakin was walking toward the exit of the temple, it was here where a familiar, older face greeted him. Jedi Master Dooku. He hugged Anakin.
"I'm sorry, Anakin. Qui-Gon was a great man. Nobody wiser."
They spent the rest of the evening together, sharing drinks at the Coruscant bars, talking and reminiscing on the memory of Qui-Gon. Sharing his epic moments, Dooku even shared tales of Qui-Gon's youth as a bolder young apprentice, which even surprised Anakin. They shared many laughs for hours and tears, till eventually the night took a different spin. Anakin eventually shared the fact that he had a relationship with Padme, and the visions that had followed, and the advice Qui-Gon had given him. This is where the fun begins. Anakin, I think I know who is behind the killing of your master, Dooku said with a croaking voice. It was not easy for him to say. I have reason to believe it was the Dark Lord of the Sith. What? How could you know this? Anakin said. Well, I had met with the Dark Lord years ago, when I was even more disillusioned with the Jedi. Anakin's face turned angry. How could you have met the Sith and not told anybody? Dooku was clearly frustrated. I didn't know what to do at the time. There was no good options. I was being patient, as Qui-Gon had advised. I know I should have said something sooner, and I should be punished for not revealing this. The least I can do now is to try to make up for this. Hear me out. I believe this Dark Lord, Darth Sidious, is behind your visions as well. Anakin tried to stay calm, following his late master's teaching, trusting in the Force. How could you know this? Why would he be behind them? Because he is in need of a new apprentice. You killed his apprentice, Darth Titus. Who would be more promising than the most powerful Jedi in the Order? But he would need to turn you to the dark side first, by giving visions of your wife dying, and next ordering the assassination of Qui-Gon. Anakin thought deeply and said, But who is the Dark Lord of the Sith? Dooku, with a subtle, cheeky smile, replied, Who is close enough in your life to know of your connection to Padme? Who alone saw your talents as a Jedi on full display? Palpatine, Anakin said. It all made sense now. Fury now really started to build in his mind, overwhelming the teachings Qui-Gon had bestowed upon him. He must pay, Anakin said. He can't get away with all of this. He's responsible for the war at hand and millions of lives as well. Agreed, Dooku replied. Let me help you. I must have revenge upon Sidious for killing Qui-Gon. Let me make amends for my failures. Together, Anakin and Dooku confronted Chancellor Palpatine. Anakin and Dooku entered Palpatine's chamber. Ah, Master Dooku and Anakin, Palpatine said. I heard Master Obi-Wan Kenobi and his apprentice have just captured Separatist leader Barriss Offee. The end of the war appears to be near. The Jedi made no reply other than the hum of lightsabers erupting. Both Anakin and Dooku's blue lightsabers were ready for the duel of their lives. Are you threatening me? The now Darth Sidious replied. A Force scream followed by Force speed almost caught Anakin and Dooku off guard, but they stood their ground. A high level of unimaginable skill took place between that of the Dark Lord, the most prominent Jedi of the Clone Wars, and the Master Swordsman in that of Dooku. Force powers were on full display, with Sith lightning of immeasurable scale, causing fires in the Chancellor's room. The 2-on-1 advantage was advantageous at first, but the Dark Lord was relentless. He utilized all forms of lightsaber combat to constantly be keeping Anakin and Dooku on their toes. Palpatine laughed when he landed blows on Dooku and Anakin, scathing them with his lightsaber. He was toying with them. Anakin's eyes were blinking between his normal shade and that of Sith Yellow, getting frustrated with his inability to defeat the Sith Lord and his anger behind Palpatine's many wrongdoing. When Anakin was knocked back momentarily, Palpatine decided he had enough playing games and finished off Dooku, dismembering both legs and arms before force throwing him out of the window. You should have listened to me all those years ago, you old fool, as he said to Dooku, throwing him to his death. Anakin, now realizing the situation he was in, dug deep into his thoughts for the few moments he had to recover. He thought back to those last words Qui-Gon had shared to him. Trust in the living Force. Those words, along with the words Qui-Gon had first shared with him all the way back on Tatooine.
Right.
Whoa!
Remember, concentrate on the moment. Feel. Don't think. Use your instincts.
I will.
May the Force be with you.
Anakin, now taking deep breaths, calmed himself down and closed his eyes. Palpatine laughed at him, but Anakin reignited his blue lightsaber and continued the fight, with the injuries of slashes on his torso and all. The duel was crazy. Anakin deepened his connection to the Force, utilizing the 20,000 plus midichlorians in his body to the maximum potential. Palpatine was beginning to lose his grip. The previous gap in power seemed to have been closed. Palpatine was fighting fully serious now, but Anakin continued to press on, having full faith in the Force to guide him. If he was truly the chosen one and meant to bring balance to the Force would guide him to his victory, or he would die here believing in his cause. The battle continued for almost an hour until Palpatine attempted to catch Anakin by surprise as he was getting desperate. Palpatine intended to end the fight with one swift motion. You see, Palpatine kept 2 lightsabers hidden in his office. When a lightsaber lock occurred between Anakin's blue and Palpatine's red saber in the middle of the office, Palpatine attempted to swiftly force pull and ignite the second saber that was hidden behind Anakin, which would have killed any Jedi. Well, Anakin was more than just a Jedi now. And even with his eyes closed, Anakin sensed what Palpatine was about to do. And in the moment the saber came flying towards him, Anakin timed a perfect force jump over the incoming saber, letting it go past him and through the foe, severing Palpatine, Darth Sidious, the Dark Lord of the Sith. Chancellor Palpatine, the Dark Lord of the Sith, was no more. After the battle, Anakin thought he had seen a familiar face through the window in the Coruscant sky. In the aftermath of the duel, Anakin returned to report on the events that had transpired. The Council was in complete shock that Palpatine was indeed the Sith Lord they had been looking for, and of Anakin's ability to defeat him. They were also not pleased that he decided to take matters in his own hand. Jedi Masters Obi-Wan Kenobi and Jedi Padawan Lord Ahsoka Tano returned from their mission, having successfully captured Barriss Offee. With no more major CIS leaders, the war was sure to be over soon. Obi-Wan expressed condolences and sadness at learning of both Qui-Gon and Dooku's death. It was here where Anakin informed Obi-Wan that he would be leaving the Jedi Order. With the galaxy in shambles and a pregnant wife to take care of, he decided it was the best decision he could make. He also told Obi-Wan his true feelings about how he felt of the Jedi Order and how it had its problems. A Sith Lord to become Supreme Chancellor of the Galaxy and starting a war killing millions, all under the noses of the inept Jedi Order? It was hard for Anakin to not blame the Jedi Order for all that had happened. But in the end, all he asked for was for Obi-Wan to promote reform within the Jedi Order and to ask the Council to reconsider how they operated the Order. Of course, the Council didn't take much heed to these suggestions, and more of the same continued. With heartfelt goodbyes, Anakin made his leave for Naboo with his pregnant wife Padme. Anakin kept his saber with him, as he figured the Jedi would not bother to come get it from him. Padme gave birth to twins Luke and Leia, who were also Force attuned like their father. Anakin taught them the ways of the Force, and the philosophy of the living Force, as his master before him had taught him. For the most part, Anakin lived a quiet and happy life thereafter, fulfilling his destiny of defeating the Sith and bringing balance to the Force. In his later years, once the kids had grown up, he made a return visit to Tatooine. It was here where he learned his mother had passed away in a peaceful manner, just years prior. Though this saddened Anakin, it didn't let him overwhelm him. Anakin then made it his goal to use his powers to free slaves all across the galaxy. He did this for the better part of his life, and by the time he grew his first gray hair, there were no more slaves left in the Outer Rim, a feat that the Jedi Council never set their sights on, but could have. Anakin spent most of his remaining years on Naboo with Padme, and his now older kids, the young adults Luke and Leia. He helped them find their first lightsaber crystals and helped them build their first sabers, and taught them how to wield them. When he had no more left to train him, he decided it was time for him to leave the life he knew once more. Anakin set out on a simpler goal now in his older age to simply discover new star systems.
Stay still, Annie. Let me clean this cut.
There's so many. Do they all have a system of planets?
Most of them.
Has anyone been to them all?
Not likely.
I want to be the first one to see them all.
The story of Anakin Skywalker had appeared to be over. One day, when Luke and Leia were practicing sparring with their lightsabers in the plains of Naboo, a starfighter they had never seen before landed nearby. Emerging from the shuttle was that of an adult female Torgruda who looked uneasy and made haste towards the twins and said,
I need your help.
"Who are you?" Luke asked. "Ahsoka Tano. I was close with your father. My master was Obi-Wan Kenobi." "Wow, we've heard so much about you," Leia now said. Luke looked excited as well. "Father would tell us stories of the Clone Wars and where you were one of the most promising Jedi Padawan out there. And Obi-Wan was known as one of the best duelists in the galaxy. I heard how you and your old master defeated the evil droid, General Grievous." "More or less," Ahsoka said. "What's the matter though? Why do you need our help?" Luke said. Ahsoka took a deep breath. "Well, there's trouble in the galaxy, specifically with the Jedi Order. Jedi Master Windu wants the Jedi to take control of the Republic, and he no longer trusts any of the politicians. Many Jedi agreed with him, but Grandmaster Yoda and others like myself do not like this train of thought. In any case, Jedi Masters Mace Windu, Ki-Adi-Mundi, and Luminara Unduli have deserted the Jedi Temple and Coruscant. Numerous Jedi Knights and Padawans have followed their departure as well." "Where did they go?" Luke asked. "I don't know. No one knows. All that we know is that it's somewhere off-world, probably a remote planet in the Outer Rim." "Well, this all sounds not ideal, but why do you need our help? Is it that big of a deal if they just left? It's not like they're doing any real harm," Leia asked. "The thing is, Windu vowed that he would be back, but didn't explain further. There was a darkness in his eyes as well. There were rumors of a Jedi civil war on the verge of happening. That's where my old master Obi-Wan suggested for me to come and find you two. You might be our only hope to bring balance if another war is fought." "I don't know how much we could help." "Oh, your father didn't tell you that he was the Chosen One? Chosen One blood flows through you, and with it, more midichlorians than any Jedi. You could help us stop this conflict. I fought one war, and that was enough for a lifetime, and more than anyone should have to go through. Trust me, you might not think it, but you are more helpful than you realize." The twins thought about it for a while and talked with their mom, Padme. Although she wanted them to stay, deep down she knew that her kids were destined to do good for the world. So she gave them their blessing, and Luke and Leia got aboard Ahsoka's ship. They set out for Coruscant, to the Jedi Temple. They first needed to evaluate the situation again. Who was still with the Jedi Order? Who had left and followed Windu? For the most part, the Jedi Council was the same as the one we knew from the prequels, albeit just older. Some new additions to the Council were made too, with Jedi Master Caleb Doom recently being given a position. Cal Kestis had been made a council member as well, but when it was found out that he was having relations with a Night Sister, he was cast out. Rumors had it he had also gone along with Mace Windu's new Jedi Order. They met with the now old Obi-Wan and Grandmaster Yoda in the Jedi Council chambers. Caleb Doom, Shakti, and other members of the council were still there. However, many seats were empty, and it left the atmosphere a bit ominous. And it was much quieter. It just felt so empty and out of place to Ahsoka. Luke and Leia were brought to these members, and Ahsoka started talking. "These are the children of Anakin Skywalker. They have been trained in the Force, like their father. While some members of the council were uneasy at first, they did tests on them and asked a series of questions to determine if they had any darkness inside of them. After all, they were not trained like typical Jedi, and they were too old. After testing though, with not much showing up of darkness, they decided collectively they had no choice but to recruit them into their rank. They then discussed the most recent developments they had heard about. "There are rumors of Windu and the other Jedi exploring Korriban," Caleb Doom said.
To a dark place this train of actions will bring us, Yoda said.
Old and wise, Master Obi-Wan spoke up. So uncivilized. The galaxy cannot afford another war. Many planets are still recovering from the losses of the Clone Wars. History seemed to be shaping up to repeat itself. Thousands of years prior, during the Old Republic, two promising Jedi had left the Order, disagreeing with the Council and their actions. Revan and Malak would go on to fight the Mandalorian War, and with it, they would turn to the dark side, with many other Jedi following the Sith teachings with them. A great war raged between the Sith Empire and the Republic following the close of the Mandalorian Wars, and it nearly destroyed the galaxy, and the Jedi Order was nearly finished. Now it appeared a similar turn of events were shaping up. Meanwhile, on Korriban, Mace Windu and the rest of the Jedi deserters explored the tombs of ancient Sith lords. When they had wandered upon the tomb of ancient Sith Lord Naga Shadow, former Jedi Ki-Adi-Mundi stumbled upon a Sith holocron in this tomb belonging to the Dark Lord. When he tried to open it, he failed, so instead Mace Windu asked for it, realizing that he would need to incorporate the dark side of the Force to open it. This time, however, it succeeded, as he put his hatred into it, and a figure of Naga Shadow appeared from the holocron.
Ask me my heritage, and I shall tell you. Ask me of my ambitions, and you shall know them. Ask for my hand in battle, and I shall likely lend you both. But ask me the secrets of Sith alchemy, and I would ask you for 3 measures of blood. 1 from a person you love, 1 from a person you hate, and 1 from yourself, the recording of Naga Shadow had said. It was here the former Jedi had come to a great discovery. There was very little Sith artifacts and holocrons back at the restricted section of the Jedi Temple, but now they had one of the great Sith alchemists' old holocron. They would utilize this power to get an upper hand against the Jedi and thwart the Jedi Council and Senate, taking control of the Republic for themselves. After all, it was for the good of the galaxy the corrupt politicians and Jedi needed to go. But to get the secrets of the Sith alchemy, Naga Shadow's holocron was very specific in needing samples of blood from a person they loved, a person they hated, and 1 from themselves. It would be easy enough for Windu to provide his own blood, and now with him leaving the Order, he could truly express his feelings for Aayla Secura, so she would agree to lend him his blood too. But to find blood of one they hated would be a bit more of a challenge. A special strike team would be needed to return to Coruscant to obtain a sample from a corrupt Jedi Master like Yoda, or a politician like the Nemodian Lot Dod. The latter of which seems simpler, and if that were the case, they might not need to go to Coruscant after all. They could simply intercept a Trade Federation vessel and get the blood sample easily with force. It was decided. Mace Windu himself went in his Jedi starfighter and informed the Nemodian ship that he was there to inspect them on official Jedi business. This deception allowed him to easily enter the Trade Federation starship, and from here he simply had to find Lot Dod. Once he found him, he drew a vial from his pouch. He demanded Lot Dod to draw his blood and put it in the vial. He refused at first, but when Mace Windu ignited his lightsaber, that helped him change his mind. After Windu got the sample, he realized that Lot Dod would no longer be needed, so he killed him, along with the other Nemodians that were close associates. With the blood sample in hand, he headed back to the group on Korriban. Meanwhile, on Coruscant, Ahsoka was teaching the twins Luke and Leia how to improve their lightsaber fighting techniques. Ahsoka would spar them 2 at once with her double sabers, and it was not challenging at first for her, but later on the Chosen One's children caught on quickly and appeared to be quick learners. Soon enough, 2-on-1 was no longer as simple, and they then transitioned to 1-on-1 combat. You both are fast learners, very talented, just like your father, Ahsoka said with a smile. They got better at lightsaber training with Ahsoka and Obi-Wan as well, who helped them improve their defensive lightsaber stances. At the same time, Yoda would help to improve their force abilities. Soon the twins were able to lift larger objects, and their force speed and jumps were improving as well. Lastly, Yoda helped them improve their force shields. Other Jedi, as well like Shakti and Caleb Doom, joined in on the training sessions. Everyone was very serious, well aware of the threat looming over them. This was not going to be a battle like they were used to, fighting against droids and blasters. They would need to fight against other Force users with lightsabers and duels, and it was not going to be easy. Mace Windu had returned from his trip back on Korriban, and after spending the night making love with Aayla Secura, he secured a sample of her blood as well, which she was happy to provide. Windu then drew his own blood, and the powerful users had a meeting again with the Naga Shadow holocron. It was here Windu offered the blood samples to the holocron, which Naga Shadow's projections seemed delighted to receive. Naga Shadow would go on to explain the subtleties of secrets of Sith alchemy. He taught them how to make modifications to their sabers, which included poison tips to the blunt end of the sabers. The greatest feat they had learned, however, was the potion that Naga Shadow had made and the recipe. This great potion would help improve force powers drastically, specifically dark side users' force powers. Mace Windu and the others agreed that with this potion, they would have what they would need to be able to defeat the Jedi and take over the Republic. It was another day of intense training at the Jedi Temple when they were made aware that they were under attack.
Returned they have, Yoda said. Protect the younglings, we must.
I will do what I must, old Obi-Wan said, igniting his blade. The Jedi had prepared some defenses, but didn't expect the fallen Jedi to return so soon. Mace Windu and the rest of the Dark Jedi marched up the Jedi Temple, with Crimson's blades ignited. But something was different about the former friends of the Jedi that had returned home. A greenish-orange glowing aura could be seen around the Dark Jedi. It almost looked as if they were possessed by some sort of Night Sister magic, but it was not quite the same color. You see, before they marched to the temple, the Dark Jedi had went on a mission of their own to find the ingredients needed to make this Force augmentation potion that the holocron of Dark Lord Nagashadow had told them about. They had made enough of it for every Dark Jedi within their ranks to have a dose. It was an ominous and terrifying sight to be seen, the hundreds of Dark Jedi consumed by the darkness around them, menacingly marching towards the temple. Mace Windu had a smile on his face as he led the charge against the initial temple guards. Yellow blades met crimson, but as Luke and Leia watched from afar in the temple window, the yellow blades of the temple guards soon died out. A battle of large scale erupted inside the Jedi Temple. It was complete chaos. There had not been this many lightsaber on lightsaber combat since the times of the Old Republic, and it was reminiscent of that of which Darth Malgus had returned to the Jedi Temple with a large force of Sith of his own and had made war against the then Jedi Master Venzalo and others. This battle was very similar to this, but this time, the dark side was even more sinister. With Nagashadow's Sith alchemy aiding the Dark Jedi, they had the advantage. Blows were shared both ways, but there were far more Jedi falling than Dark Jedi. The Jedi in reserve on the upper level that were protecting the hundreds of younglings had no choice but to join the fight now. Yoda, Shakti, Kanan Jarrus, Ahsoka, and the twins Luke and Leia joined the battle.
Destroy Mace, I must,
Yoda said as he leapt into the battle with his Force speed heading straight for Mace Windu, who had just cut down a Jedi Padawan. The battle was truly a sight to be seen, with former Jedi Masters and Council members taking up arms against each other, trading blows. While Mace Windu and Yoda fought, Kanan Jarrus had taken on Luminara Unduli, and Shakti took on Ki-Adi-Mundi. Stay close to me and follow my lead, Ahsoka said to the twins. It was an absolute bloodbath, and the dark side was slowly closing its grip over the Jedi. The battle had started with around 400 Force-augmented Dark Jedi up against thousands of Jedi. But with those odds, you would think the Jedi would have no problem stopping the new Sith. But you have to keep in mind that of the Jedi that had left to follow Windu, almost all were Jedi Knights and Masters, many of which were battle-hardened from the Clone Wars many years prior. While there are thousands of Jedi at the temple, many of those numbers consisted of Padawans and younglings, just beginning to find their way in the world and the Force. Combine this fact with the added boost of the Sith alchemy, the Jedi were dropping like flies. Masters were being slain by their former Padawans, lightsabers were dropping the floor left and right. General Grievous wishes he was still alive. Luke and Leia had finally gotten their first shot at real combat, during the most pivotal battle that would change the course of the entire galaxy. At first they were a bit sloppy and nervous with the red blades coming close to hitting them, but with the training they had went through in the months prior, along with just their natural talent, they were quickly getting the hang of things. Just when the Jedi were starting to finally rally a comeback, a terrible shriek was let out. Shakti had just been stabbed through the chest by Ki-Adi-Mundi, and the sight of a leader of the Jedi Council member falling discouraged many. The Jedi had managed a small victory of their own, with Caleb Dune managing to strike down Luminara Unduli, but the battle raged on. Mace Windu and Yoda were still going at it. Normally, they would roughly have been equal match, considering Yoda's age and his aggressive fighting style with many jumps and Force speed. Yoda was slowing down. Mace Windu took this opportunity to his advantage. In a moment where Yoda was exhausted and distracted by the sight of a Padawan slain, his Force bubble was broken, and Windu Force choked the life out of him. I should have been made Grand Master. You were always so weak and indecisive. You let the Senate and all the politicians get to their corrupt state and did nothing. After getting his last words out, Mace Windu finished Yoda off and let out a powerful Force scream in the process, almost with a hint of conflict after killing his old friend. Regardless, the Force scream was powerful and it buffered many Jedi. Morale dropped at an all-time low at the sight of the Grand Master's death, and Jedi started backing up. Retreat! Retreat to the upper level! Ahsoka screamed. This was easier said than done, though many of the remaining Jedi were able to retreat up the stairs. However, many were not so lucky, and retreat was just not an option. How could you do this? Caleb Doom said. He was mid-duel when the retreat order came against none other than his old master, Dagobah. The Jedi Council was weak. Look at them, Dagobah said as she pointed at Yoda's dead body. Join us, and together we can bring peace and order to the galaxy. I'll never join you, Caleb said, and a new power within him allowed him to start pushing his old master back. And just as he was about to defeat her, his force bubble was broken, and he was slain in the back by none other than the Dark Lord Windu. Dagobah thanked him for saving him, but Windu could sense her conflict. I have no use for a weak, washed-up Jedi Master, and Windu crushed the internal organs of the Jedi Master. Now Caleb Doom and Dagobah lay together, cold and lifeless, the Master and Apprentice reunited once more. Ahsoka did her best to comfort the younglings on the top floor, but it was hard to hide the loss. It was looking pretty bleak, and even the younglings could sense that defeat seemed near. It will be alright, the Force will guide us, old Obi-Wan said. He was assigned to look after the younglings. As old as he was still the master of Sorsu, the defensive lightsaber fighting style. He put some force behind his words with just a hint of a mind trick to help keep the younger Jedi and younglings in line. They would have no chance with everyone already giving up hope. They waited behind the main gate, lightsabers already drawn. The leaders of the Jedi that were left consisted of Ahsoka, Luke, Leia, and old Obi-Wan. 2 red blades punctured the gate, and they began to cut down the door. This is where the fun begins, Ahsoka said. The second stage of the battle began, with it mainly taking place in close quarters combat. This time the Jedi were a bit more prepared, having Padawans at the level above them and behind archive books shoot blasters down onto the dark Jedi entering the room. Obi-Wan didn't fully agree with the use of blasters, claiming it to be uncivilized, but decided if it got to this point they might need them. Ki-Adi-Mundi took on Obi-Wan, the Master of Sorsu, while Ahsoka took on Mace Windu. Luke and Leia tried to help where they could, but Windu was just too fast. They didn't want to get in Ahsoka's way. Things again were not looking good. Jedi were dropping once more, and it was about to get even worse. Though Obi-Wan's skills with the lightsaber kept him in the fight, he hadn't anticipated the butt end of Ki-Adi-Mundi's saber to have poisoned him when it had struck him. After taking a blow of the poison, it worked fast, slowing him down. Obi-Wan knew his time was done and did something bizarre in his last moments. He looked over at Luke and Leia fighting and seemingly smiled, right as Ki-Adi-Mundi went for the finishing blow. Obi-Wan's body disappeared and was just left with his robes and saber. No! Luke said as he saw the wise master fall. Ahsoka had no time to react or grieve to her master's falling, as it took every ounce of her energy to survive the onslaught of Mace Windu's strikes. Eventually, Mace Windu sent a powerful wave of force energy at Ahsoka, shaking her up, and he took the opportunity to cut her right arm off. Ahsoka had fainted after the trauma from the lost arm and the other damage she had sustained. We have to help her, Leia said, and the twins joined the fight against Mace. Ah, you must be Anakin's kids. I will gladly put an end to the wretched Skywalker bloodline, Mace said, as he now directed his attention to Luke and Leia. The twins fought side by side against the powerful Dark Lord. Mace was nothing like they had ever fought against. He was so fast, and his strikes carried so much force. There was a yellow glow to his eyes of pure hatred, but the chemistry of the twins was unlike any other, and even with their lack of experience, they were able to hold their own. That was until Ki-Adi-Mundi now directed his attention to the twins as well. Now things were not looking so good. Luke and Leia could not hold on much longer, and all around them, Jedi continued to fall. Then, something changed. It was in the air. The twins could sense it first, and then so did the rest of the Force users. Everyone paused as they felt the presence of something truly great getting closer. An older man, in gray hooded robes, made his way up the stairs from behind the Sith. At the back of him was former Jedi Master Cal Kestis and his wife Merrin. I will show you true sorcery, Merrin said with a booming voice as she teleported all over the place, knocking over Dark Jedi left and right. Cal Kestis took up arms against Aayla Secura, and then that left just the mysterious hooded man. Mace and Ki-Adi-Mundi turned away from Luke and Leia to face him. When the man got close enough, Mace realized who it was, and angrily sprinted toward him, lightsaber ignited. All the hooded man did was lift his left hand, and boom, just like that, Mace Windu was stopped in his tracks. Same with Ki-Adi-Mundi. This Force user was so powerful he was able to completely freeze the Dark Jedi in place. Ahsoka's eyes had opened after being unconscious. She looked up past the chaos to see a familiar face. "Anakin?" Ahsoka said. All eyes were now focused on the Chosen One. Every time a dark Jedi went to strike, Anakin simply lifted his hand to freeze them in place. Cal had managed to win his duel with Aayla Secura, and Merrin was now circling back after helping out with other battles going on in the temple. "Father, is that really you?" Luke asked. "Yes, my son," Anakin Skywalker replied. "Everything is going to be okay now." With that, the gruesome battle had ended. In the aftermath of the battle, all the Dark Jedi were either defeated or captured. The threat of another galactic war was over, but with it came a large cost. Thousands of Jedi had fallen during the Great Battle. "Father, are you back for good this time?" Leia asked, as now Ahsoka, Luke, and Leia surrounded the Chosen One. "Well, as much as I would like to be," Anakin said with a smile, and put his arms around all of them. "I can't. I have unfinished work to do in the galaxy and beyond." Luke and Leia looked happy at first, but now a bit sad with the realization that this reunion would be short-lived. Anakin continued, "Luke, Leia, I'm so proud of you. You're all grown up and Jedi in your own right. The Republic and the Jedi Order needs your help, the both of you." He then turned to Ahsoka. "And Snips, look at you now. You will need to guide a new generation of Jedi and become the Grand Master." He looked towards the body of his old friend Obi-Wan, with his smile faded. "You must help reform the Jedi Order, learn from its past mistakes so events like this never happen again. I believe in you, Ahsoka." Ahsoka nodded in agreement, and with one final hug to his kids and Ahsoka, he stepped back and suddenly vanished. You see, Anakin was not actually there physically. He was actually located in an entirely different galaxy at the time. But rather, this was a formation of the living force that he projected across the galaxies. He had sensed that Luke and Leia were in danger and decided it was time for him to step in. Admittedly, he allowed for what he considered necessary deaths to occur first in the battle, as he knew if he stepped in too early, this cycle of corruption and infighting would continue. Some of the old Jedi, like Yoda and Mace Windu, were stuck in their old ways, and the Order would never work with them still around. How did Anakin learn to protect himself through the Force like this? Well, back when I had mentioned Anakin was trained by Qui-Gon and shown the ways of the living Force, I didn't exactly go into great detail. You see, with Qui-Gon Jinn surviving the fight versus Maul, he had so much more time to learn from the wills and the greater Force beings, knowing how to transcend as a Force ghost and even more. He had shared some of this knowledge with Anakin, and then years after Qui-Gon's death, when Anakin was exploring the galaxy, Qui-Gon had appeared to him as a Force ghost, and continues Anakin's training as a Force ghost, showing him all aspects and expressions of the living Force. This would allow Anakin to go on to become the most powerful Force user by a large margin, as evidence of the battle at the Jedi Temple. In the end, peace would be restored to the galaxy, and corruption would be routed out of the Republic. The Jedi Order would become reformed under the tutelage of Grandmaster Ahsoka Tano, and some of her most promising Jedi of the Order were that of Luke and Leia. The Jedi Order would become a more fair and balanced order, accepting all Force users who had wanted to become a Jedi, regardless of age or skill. And rather than hiding knowledge of the dark side, they would also teach Jedi about it as well, because if you know how dangerous something is and are properly trained on the matter, there's a less of a chance that a Jedi would want to turn, with the mystery of the dark side no longer there to allure them. Anakin continued exploring new galaxies for a time, educating primal beings in the Force and other subjects such as hyperspace travel. He would free slaves and put an end to conflicts and instill democracies across the galaxy. When he finally felt as though he had done enough for the galaxy, he would return home to Naboo, where his loving wife Padme had waited for him all these years. He would live out the rest of his days in peace, getting occasional updates from Luke and Leia on how things were going with the Order and the Republic, but for the most part, he was completely removed from politics and the game of Star Wars. Anakin and Padme would continue to share their love on Naboo, eating good food, watching the sunset, and even spending time relaxing on the sandy beach for the rest of their days.
It was an eerie day as ever on the remote planet of Dagobah. Two lightsabers clashed between Jedi, blue striking green. The green saber belonged to none other than Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker, and the blue, Jedi Knight Leia Skywalker. Leia had pressed the attack on Luke, who redirected the blow and sabers into trees nearby. A glowing figure watched from above them. Good. But you need to be mindful of the living force around you. This planet is strong in the Force, but try not to disturb it, Force Ghost Anakin had said to them. The Skywalker twins had gone to search for Force-rich planets to complete their training post the Jedi Civil War, when they came across the Dagobah system, and immediately felt the connection to it. Their father, Anakin Skywalker, had no problem appearing as a Force ghost in a Force-rich world such as Dagobah, and from time to time, Masters Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and other deceased Jedi Masters of old would appear to give them pointers as well. Following the Jedi Council Civil War decades prior, the galaxy was in an era of mostly peace. Grandmaster Ahsoka Tano led the effort to rebuild the Jedi Order and helped to stabilize the Republic. Luke and Leia, full of promise and potential, lacked the proper training in the time during the war, so they had to spend most of their time training and completing various diplomatic and other missions for the Council in these past decades or so. It was not until they felt they had reached a plateau of their Force knowledge and strength that they asked Ahsoka for leave to train and further their understanding of the Force. Ahsoka, knowing that feeling of being explorative in youth, happily obliged and allowed them this freedom. This training lasted roughly half a year, which wouldn't be a crazy long time in terms of normal Jedi training, but on a Force-rich planet with Force Ghost instructors, these months were worth decades of knowledge. Trust your instincts. Let the Force guide you, Force Ghost Anakin said. He stretched out his arms and pointed at Leia and Luke's hearts. Within you, the blood of the Chosen One resides. I never asked to be what I was, but ultimately the Force chose me. And now that I'm gone, you two must continue to keep the balance. Father, I never asked for this, Luke said. Anakin put a Force Ghost arm around his shoulder. I know, son, but sometimes you have to put your wants below the galaxy's needs. What would you have us do? Leia asked. Watch, wait, listen. Feel the Force flow all around you. When the time comes, you will know what to do. And remember, you are not alone. Anakin finished and walked into the darkness towards the smiling Force Ghost Qui-Gon Jinn. You have done well, Anakin, Qui-Gon said. Qui-Gon now put a shoulder on Anakin, and they walked off and disappeared into space itself. It was deep into their training on Dagobah when Luke entered a certain cave, which felt stronger in the Force compared to even rest of the planet. Unbeknownst to our heroes, this was none other than the Cave of Evil. In this cave, Luke saw many things, most of which were hard to decipher. But what Luke saw that stuck out to him most was a blue humanoid being with scarlet red eyes. There was no doubt in Luke's mind that this was a sign of a new threat coming to the galaxy, and this mysterious blue-faced figure had to have a part in it. In the coming days, the pair of Luke and Leia wrapped up their training on Dagobah. Luke shared what he saw to Leia in the cave, and they realized that they must take their findings to Ahsoka and the rest of the Jedi Council. The pair said their goodbyes to their temporary home on Dagobah and set a course to Coruscant, jumping to hyperspace. In the Jedi Council chambers, it had seemed that Luke and Leia's timing could not have been better. Ships are disappearing in the Outer Rim, many of them infrequently, Ahsoka said. Who could be doing this? Is there a trend to the ships that are disappearing? Leia asked. Most of these cargo ships are holding precious metals and advanced electronics useful to the Republic fleet, Jedi Master Cal Kestis said. But who could be doing this? The Sith are gone and the galaxy is at peace, Ahsoka said. Luke finally spoke up. The galaxy might not be what we know. In my time at Dagobah, I learned many things, one of which I believe to have been the future. A blue-faced man with red eyes conquering the galaxy. Murmurs sparked in the Jedi Council. You speak of a Chiss, Ahsoka said. Preposterous! The Chiss are a legendary tale, not thought to exist in anything but legends, a Jedi Master said. There is some truth to that, Ahsoka said. However, Jedi Master Anakin Skywalker, a close friend of mine, once spoke of me during the Clone Wars, of someone described to be the same as this blue-faced individual with the red eyes. Anakin even said that this being was extremely smart and tactical. If these visions you had are true, and the Chiss are truly our enemies, the galaxy is in danger, Ahsoka said. Then we have no choice but to take these claims more seriously. The galaxy cannot suffer another full-scale war, Cal Kestis said. Months passed, and it was almost as if the enemy heard the Jedi Council's conversation. The Jedi were beginning to doubt the Chiss' involvement, as there had been not any incursions since that conversation. That was until on Myito, there was a report that a score of precious kyber crystals were stolen. Luke and Leia were the Jedi Knights sent to investigate the situation. The duo emerged from hyperspace and landed their dual Jedi-class fighters on a nearby rundown platforms on the surface of Myito. They landed about a half a league from the Hammer Tong facility, which was now an ancient research facility once utilized by Geonosian scientists, who conducted research on various metals and crystals, including kyber crystals. While Myito was known for its kyber crystals, the truth was that most of them had been mined out and were being held at this facility. The pair of twin Jedi observed their surroundings to be run down as they continued to be closer to their destination. A faint smokestack could be observed coming from the facility from afar. It wasn't long before they found a couple dead bodies of Republic guardsmen who were posted here to protect this old facility. This doesn't look like the work of a blaster, Leia said. No, Luke said as he examined the body closer, unveiling some blunt damage. It looks like these men were killed with blunt force. R2, call us in and report to the Jedi Council we found the Republic guardsmen. You stay at the ship. You're going in. The pair continued and finally entered the rundown facility. It didn't take long to find more damage across the old place. They found scorch marks on a broken down blast door, which evidently had led to the storage room. It was empty. I have a bad feeling about this, Leia said. Out of nowhere, a creature came flying towards them, attempting to whack them with a staff. He was fast, faster than them. Hand-to-hand combat ensued, and it was clear that this creature, who appeared to be a Nogri, was a master of martial arts. They didn't have time to pull out their lightsabers, and the creature wouldn't give them the space, let alone the time to do so. Finally, Luke sent a wave of force kinesis at the enemy, and the pair started to run out of the facility. The oppressor was close behind, though, and even with their force speed, keeping up. Finally, when they were outside and more in the opening, the pair would no longer run and turn to face their enemy. They ignited their lightsabers, but this didn't seem to affect their oppressor's plans. The Nogri, Ryuk, pressed forward, evading the fast Jedi blades with even faster and more nimble movements. They continued to get berated with physical damage. It wasn't looking good until finally Luke had enough. He reached out with the Force and stopped the creature in his place. Who sent you here? What do you want? Luke said with a commanding voice. Ryuk made no reply, only smirking. Luke was not entertained by this. He pointed his lightsaber closer to the creature's neck and asked again, Who sent you here? Ryuk laughed and said one word. Thrawn. And in the moment after, Ryuk took out the opportunity of shock to do a backflip, kicking Luke in the face while evading his blade, and using the force of the kick to push off of Luke and make for his escape. He'd also laid out a smokescreen bomb. By the time Luke was helped up by Leia, the creature was gone. The pair returned to their ships. Although mostly in defeat, they did at least learn one important piece of information. They got back to their ships and utilized a long-range communication to report back their findings to Ahsoka and the rest of the council. As they made the reveal that their worst fears had been realized, and Thrawn was truly out and about, they saw a ship in the distance take off. This left their conversation cut short as they hopped into their Jedi starfighters to pursue. As Luke and Leia sped after Ryuk's ship, they could feel the tension in the Force. This encounter with the Nogri assassin and the revelation of Thrawn's involvement had set off alarm bells. The sky had darkened as the twins hurtled through the Myito atmosphere, weaving around sharp ridges and the frozen debris in hot pursuit of their target. But just as they closed in, the ship entered hyperspace, disappearing in an instant. Luke and Leia exchanged glances from their starships, disappointed, but having to move on. We need to go back to Coruscant and inform Ahsoka and the rest of the Council, Luke said. Back on Coruscant, the Jedi Council held an emergency meeting. Masters Ahsoka, Cal Kestis, and others debated the situation and
hushed tones as Luke and Leia shared their harrowing encounter with the Nogri assassin, and as well what they had learned of the true name of their enemy, Thrawn. This so-called Thrawn, or whatever you call him, his intentions are clear, Cal Kestis said grimly. He's amassing resources, and now with the kyber crystals in his possession, he may have the means to weaponize them. Ahsoka's brow furrowed. The Chiss aren't just any strategists. If he's using kyber crystals, he's likely building something catastrophic on multiple levels. We must locate him, but how? It was then Luke that spoke up. I think I know how and where we might find him. Everyone in the room, including Leia, turned to him with astonished looks. During my time at Dagobah, in the Cave of Evil, I had dreams and visions of a place cloaked in darkness. I could sense an immense concentration of the Force, though it was dark, and it echoed in the darkness. And since then, at times I've felt this darkness call to me. I think if I reach out to the Force far enough, I might be able to sense where this is coming from, this dark place. After some murmuring, ultimately Ahsoka spoke up. Well, young Snips, it's not exactly perfect, but it's something. We'll mobilize the Jedi Order and our forces. There's just too much at stake. Prepare yourselves, but be wary. Thrawn will be expecting us. At this time, Cal Kestis was a very involved Jedi Master of the Council. He was even more so invested now that his wife, Merrin, had just had their second child. He had no interest in seeing the galaxy fall into a downward spiral in a large-scale war, nor any interest in raising his kids. Cal Kestis would do whatever he needed to do to help contribute to stop this conflict. Ahsoka, Cal Kestis, Luke, and Leia, and the rest of the Jedi led a large fleet of Jedi starships and Republic cruisers into the unknown territories, following Luke's Force-driven sense of direction to that darkness. Days passed in tense silence as they combed through the star systems, until finally Luke felt a greater grasp of the darkness, pulling him closer. To be able to get closer to this connection, he utilized his Force senses in a way to make consecutive jumps to hyperspace based off of the directions that this darkness would call to him, just getting closer each time. And unbeknownst to them and the rest of the Jedi, this is how Force-sensitive Chiss would travel without the use of navigation computers, but the Force itself. Finally, they locked on the planet. In the dark side senses of all the Jedi were present now. Many weaker Jedi and younger Jedi started to vomit at the sheer level of the darkness. They descended into the dark clouds of the planet. Once they got past the clouds, they were surprised to get met by enemy cruisers who opened fire on them. The ships had the look of Mandalorian star cruisers. A massive battle over the surface of this mysterious and dark planet erupted. Dogfights ensued, and Jedi strike teams landed on the surface. There was 2 battles at once going on, one in the air and one on the ground of this dark planet. The planet was full of mud, and it was just dirty and dark, and the mud got everywhere. Blue, yellow, green lightsabers clashed against Beskar steel, along with other Chiss warriors fighting against the Jedi and Republic soldiers. It was all-out war between the surface and the ground. Luke and Leia fought with precision and synergy, moving as one through the battlefield. Dread filled the air, and Luke had no choice but to follow where this source of dread and darkness was coming from. Somewhere beyond this dark battle, there was something even more sinister in the works. As Luke and Leia pressed deeper into Thrawn's fortress, a cold, eerie silence replaced the sounds of combat. Ahsoka and Cal Kestis led the forces against the Mandalorians in the meantime, giving the opportunity for Luke and Leia to track down their true enemy. They ultimately came across a massive chamber that was lined with kyber crystal shards that glue faintly with a slight red hue. At the end of this great room, in a throne, sat Thrawn himself, hands crossed. "Ah, Skywalkers," he greeted, his voice calm and collected. "I had wondered when you would finally arrive." Leia's grip tightened on her lightsaber. "This ends here, Thrawn. The galaxy won't fall to your tyranny." Thrawn chuckled, his red eyes gleaming with amusement. "I never needed the galaxy or the Republic people, only its resources." With a snap of his fingers, two massive doors slid open from behind him, revealing a shadowy figure. As he stepped into the dim light, Luke and Leia's hearts sunk. This figure, surrounded by darkness, was none other than a young Anakin Skywalker. You see, this was Thrawn's clone, a version of their father, but imbued with darkness. You see, Thrawn had met Anakin Skywalker during the Clone Wars back on the planet of Batuu. There they found each other mutually interested allies against a CIS factory. Thrawn, seeing Anakin's skill and prowess while he was with him, couldn't help but, when given the opportunity, take a sample of his hair for DNA for later. He had never been next to a being with so much power. And well, after many years of research and studying, they were able to clone his being. "Meet the ultimate weapon of destruction," Thrawn said with a malicious smile. The clone ignited a crimson saber. His gaze of yellow Sith eyes burned with the darkness within him, devoid of mercy. Luke and Leia exchanged looks. They had trained for just about anything, but nothing could have prepared them to face the very image of their father. The clone Anakin wasted no time, lunging at Luke and Leia with a ferocity that was both precise and brutal. His lightsaber clashed against theirs, filling the room with flashes of red, green, and blue. Leia leaped back, narrowly evading a powerful strike as Luke countered with a powerful force push of his own. The clone twisted midair, landing gracefully, a cruel smile on his face as he moved in again, relentless. The battle was intense. Potential and skill were on full display as a deadly dance of the twins combined their strengths against the clone. They channeled their powers together and tried to lean into the lessons that the Force Ghost Anakin and others had taught them. But the clone was unyielding, each move mirroring that of the irreplaceable and legendary skill of Jedi Master Anakin Skywalker. "You can't win," the clone Anakin said. "I'll never surrender," Luke said back. "You are not my father." The clone only smirked, his voice a chilling echo. "Your father is gone. I am what remains." The words stung, but Luke shook his head and pushed on. He centered himself in his ideals, letting the Force guide his movements. Together, Luke and Leia managed to land a grazing strike, forcing the clone to retreat momentarily. Watching from his throne, Thrawn's expression remained calm. He was prepared for every outcome. With a subtle gesture, he activated a control panel, and the walls shifted to reveal a giant, transparent container filled with kyber crystals infused with reactors. The crystals began to glow, their energies growing dangerously volatile. "You may have stalled my clone," Thrawn called out, "but soon this entire planet will produce an energy so destructive it will cripple the galaxy and bend it to my will." Luke and Leia's focus shifted from the clone to the reactor behind them, but they didn't have a moment to react as the clone Anakin renewed his attack now with more intensity. This clone didn't feel pain. Leia looked at Luke, full of determination. "We have to stop this, or the whole galaxy is going to be in trouble." They worked together to use the Force to push back the clone Anakin. But as they moved towards the reactors, Thrawn revealed now another challenge for them to overcome. Ryuk, an Ogre, about a half-dozen Nogri assassins. Now, they're at a disadvantage between the assassins and even a couple of elite Mandalorian warriors and the clone Anakin against them. The odds were stacked against them. As the battle raged, Luke and Leia struggled. The clone Anakin was fast, and they were being overwhelmed by the countless enemies now. They had to dodge blaster bolts from the Mandalorians and melee attacks from the Nogri assassins. They were at their limits. Things were looking grim. And just as it looked like things were going to take a turn for the worse, a soft but unmistakable light blue light shimmered into the room. It was their father. The real Anakin. Anakin's Force Ghost appeared, standing tall between them, between Luke and Leia and his dark counterparts. The room fell silent now, and there was a pause. Blaster bolts went through Anakin's Force Ghost, obviously doing nothing. Thrawn now no longer shared a calm look, but an angry and agitated look. "Luke, Leia," Anakin's voice resonated with them. "You are not alone. Draw the Force within inside you, and let's do this. Luke and Leia felt a surge of energy as Anakin extended his hand outward, channeling the pure essence of the Force itself into them. His presence alone seemed to weaken the hold of darkness in the room and the planet, lifting the atmosphere. The twins rose to their feet, their strength renewed. Anakin's clone, shaken, but still was resolute, snarled and launched himself at the pair again with fierce intensity. But now the twins were prepared. Luke and Leia moved with perfect synchronization, weaving around each other, bolstered by their father's Force Ghost abilities. Their sabers were a blur of blue and green. Anakin stood at their side, using the Force as well to block blows from the assassins and Mandalorians, assisting them. Don't bend it. Feel. Let the Force flow through you, Anakin instructed. Luke and Leia closed their eyes momentarily, allowing them to be fully attuned to the Force. When they opened them, they moved with renewed precision. Their attacks now swift and even more coordinated than before. The clone was now struggling to keep up, till finally he was knocked to his feet by the twins. Why do you fight? Anakin asked his clone softly, in a curious voice almost. This darkness has twisted you, but it doesn't have to define you. The clone hesitated, his saber faltering, the rage in his eyes beginning to waver. But Thrawn's voice, the voice of the clone's master, spoke up, "Fight, or you are nothing." The clone's eyes hardened to the Sith yellow once more. Force Ghost Anakin would not have it. He placed out his hand and sent a channel of Force healing through the clone, who fell to his knees at the feet of the real Force Ghost Anakin. And Anakin said, "You are free. Release yourself. Through the Force, there is peace." As he spoke these words, and they resonated with the clone, who seemed to understand them, a faint shimmer of light appeared around him. He looked up to the real Anakin, and in that moment, he disappeared. Luke seemed to have caught a smile a moment before the clone disappeared into the Force itself. The clone was out of the fight, but the battle wasn't over. Thrawn got up from his chair, veiled in irritation. He unveiled a lever and activated this switch, and the kyber crystals began to start glowing even more fiercely now, looking to overload. "Even with your victory here, you will not escape," he declared, his voice cold. "This facility, though I had greater plans for it, will serve as a beacon of power that will reshape the galaxy, even if it costs me my own life. The Chiss Ascendancy will fill the power void left when all of you and the wretched Jedi are gone." "He intends to blow himself up, and all of us," Leia said. The reactors were not looking good, and Anakin's Force Ghost turned to his children. "Go to the control room. You can still stop this." Luke and Leia raced through the facility, through blaster fire and Mandalorian guards. Finally, they got to the back wiring in the control center, where the inputs were truly happening, causing the mass acceleration of the kyber crystals to implode. Just as they fought against the initial guards and were going to deactivate the programs, Thrawn and Ryuk now reappeared, and they were surrounded by Mandalorian elite troopers. But it wasn't enough. Still synergized with Anakin's Force Ghost powers enlightening them, they let out a Force wave of Force paralysis so powerful that it froze everyone in a 100-meter radius, unable to take action. They were only able to do this between the combined might of Anakin's Force Ghost Chosen One powers and their own Chosen One's blood flowing through them. And this gave them the time they needed to deactivate the self-destruct sequence. At the same time, they incapacitated the rest of the guards and were left with just Thrawn. "It's over, Thrawn. Surrender," Luke said. Realizing his plans had truly failed for real, Thrawn got to his knees and pleaded with them. "Wait! There is a greater enemy of the galaxy brewing in the deep spaces. You need me." Luke deactivated his saber. "The galaxy will find balance, Thrawn. With or without you, the Force will guide us." After arresting Thrawn, they rendezvoused with Ahsoka and the rest of the Jedi leaders who had ramped up the battle there. Though there were heavy losses, they prevented a major disaster once again from spreading darkness throughout the galaxy. With a final glance at the twins, And with his arms behind his back, Thrawn straightened himself up, composed even in his defeat. Luke and Thrawn's eyes met as the once formidable Chiss Grand Admiral Thrawn was taken into custody. The battle on this dark planet was over, and already the air seemed to be cleaner. With the darkness enshrouding the planet ceasing, it began to snow. Anakin's Force ghost appeared one more time before Luke, Leia, and Ahsoka. He looked at all of them with pride. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "You found balance and were successful in saving the galaxy. I'm proud of you both. And you too, Snips." Luke, Leia, and Ahsoka nodded, tears running down their eyes. They shared a hug through the Force until it was time for Anakin to return to the netherworld of the Force. Back on Coruscant, the surviving Jedi gathered to give the full report to the council that wasn't around and prepare a report to the Galactic Senate. Once again, peace was preserved. The Skywalker legacy, now carried on by Luke and Leia, was one of hope, peace, and resilience. The galaxy had been saved yet again by the will of the Force and the Chosen One's blood. And as Luke and Leia looked ahead to the city skyline sunset on Coruscant, they knew they would be ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. As the sun finally set, Force ghosts consisting of Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Anakin Skywalker smiled back at them, and then disappeared forever, being at peace, knowing well that the galaxy was in the right hands. There would always be hope to those in the world who put their faith in the Force.